welcome to the intersection of Black culture and horticulture with your girl, Cola B talking. And guess what, y'all? We Black in the garden. Hey. Welcome to Black in the Garden, the intersection between Black culture and horticulture. On today's episode, we are talking about your Black plant faves. Yes, this is one of those subjects that I was so excited to dive into that I didn't even know where to begin. Because who am I to really make such a bold claim on behalf of the entire Black delegation? This is also one of those subjects that illuminates the need for more field study and data collection in order to have readily available resources that document our past and our ongoing experiences with an enjoyment of plants as Black people. Plants have played essential roles in Black cultural practices, cuisines, traditional medicine, and skincare routines, and it brings me very real joy to emphasize the way that plants are connected to every aspect of our lives. I mean, every aspect, y'all. In order to determine 3 plants that are most commonly used by Black people, we would need to consider factors such as cultural significance, historical usage, culinary applications, medicinal properties, skincare benefits, and practicality in gardening or in our daily lives. It was hard to narrow it down to just 3, but no worries because we can always revisit this, especially after we get some feedback from our soil cousins about your favorite plants. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Joshua Heights, aka Plant Zaddy. Through his brainchild, Plant Zaddy, he is revolutionizing spaces from local establishments to star-studded events like Revolt World. He's also from Cincinnati, Ohio, so shout out to the Midwest. As a Black man blazing his trail in the plant world, Josh is not just cultivating greenery, but he is also sowing seeds of inspiration for the next generation. Please welcome to Black in the Garden, Plant Zaddy. Josh, welcome to Black in the Garden. I'm so glad that you could join us.
I'm so happy to be here.
Of course. And thank you so much for the plants. Tell us about
Absolutely.
Plant Zaddy Enterprises.
You know, Plant Zaddy Club is not only a brand, it is a full experience, So that's what I wanted to bring to you today. Bringing the jungle, also some knowledge and some good conversation, but it's a vibe. So we're going to make sure we vibe out.
We are definitely vibing on today. I'm feeling it. It's positive. Vibes are high because that is what plants do.
Energy.
Absolutely. Big plant energy, big positive energy. All right. So we're talking about 3 plant faves on today.
Okay.
All right. Can you guess what they are?
Ooh.
You don't have to guess. Don't guess. I was just playing. I'm going to tell you. We're going to start with the peace lily.
Okay.
I know you have a lot to say. You're going to offer some insights. All right. The girls are struggling, but we're going to try to get you right. And we're also going to talk about collard greens, a staple on so many Black tables.
So many.
I've had so many in my day. And then we're going to conclude with a conversation about palms.
Okay, let's do it.
And we're going to get kind of deep with the palms, so prepare yourselves.
Okay.
But let's start with the peace lily.
That's a finicky one. Let's start with the hardest of them all.
All right. So, we like to think outside of the box on the Black in the Garden podcast. And in doing so, I just realized that I had to emphasize the peace lily. Mm-hmm. Okay. The reason could be a bit morbid, but just hear me out because people die every day, B. So funerals take place daily. One thing about Black people, especially African Americans, is that we always gonna bring a peace lily to the funeral. Am I right?
It's a staple.
It is a staple. But it's interesting that they call it peace lily because it doesn't necessarily always bring us peace.
Correct.
And I believe you can share some insights with us on how to
properly care for them.
Yeah.
To bring more peace because peace lilies are very finicky. Mm-hmm. I think that they are the top plant that communicates to us the most. And with you saying that, people bring them to funerals, it's an opportunity to remember, but also keep that constant communication. And peace lilies, give you a relationship of up and down all the time. And that kind of is a reminder of where you got it from, but it's also a reminder to keep going. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say they're finicky, you may see the leaves kind of droop down when it's time to water, but that's a reminder to water, you know? And it's not a plant that you really have to touch the soil like I always tell people, but you pay attention to the leaves.
That's
And
the
it
first thing
also,
you see.
absolutely,
Yeah.
first thing you see. And then if you have a bud or a flower that they get as well, they're actually named after that. So I think Spath, maybe it's German, I think. But
Spathe.
TH, I think.
Okay.
I think so, yes.
I mean, we know words, but we don't always know science.
Okay,
This is
that
not
part.
a science show, by the way.
That part. No, well, but we are giving education.
We are educating
Yes,
for sure.
yes. So the cup within the white leaf is how they got their name. But that leaf helps with air purification as well. The plant helps purify the air, bring more oxygen and things of that nature. But I think that it's very important to remember where we started, which was people bring them to funerals and you take them home to care for them and remember the loved one that you may have lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So through that process, you may lose leaves, but you have to understand that, you know, we'll talk about that later with the watering moment, but through the process of losing things, new growth comes. So, you know, you may have lost a loved one, but you have to keep going because you're still here on a mission, and you got to remember that mission.
Okay, I like how you got philosophical with that. And we were also able to relate the behavior of the plant to us in a way that helps us to understand its communication style.
Peace.
Maybe even its love language.
Peace.
So
when you start to properly take care and you understand the peace lily, it will bring peace. But it also, like I said, is a constant up and down.
Josh is deep. Okay. I appreciate that. So, you know, plants have always been, for as long as Black people have been burying each other and dying, not to get too morbid, but we've always involved plants into our cultural celebrations. And so it's not to be excluded that we have included plants in funeral processions and, you know, burials and things of that nature. But just emphasizing the peace lily. And I hope that y'all can accept that very favorably as one of my Black plant faves. I'm not sure if it's yours because it might not have brought you peace, but Josh is here
to teach you, you know? So the first step is one, understanding that peace lilies are low light plants. So they're easy care as well.
Okay.
And when we say easy care, you got to go back to maybe a plant doesn't look perfect all the time, but it's communicating. Okay. But proper care, you know, you don't make sure that you water it every about 14 days or so.
Really?
Don't water it every week because that's how you get root rot. And peace lilies do like a drought. They do like to droop.
I didn't know.
And that helps strengthen the plant as well. So if you keep it constantly watered, that's not going to allow the normal
cycle?
temperature. Exactly.
Okay.
For it to go through. But you don't want it to die. So you don't want it to turn brown, but you want to let it communicate to you.
I didn't realize it was a good thing for the leaves to droop a little bit.
It's a good thing. I mean, just like a fiddle leaf.
Yeah.
They like a drought, but you have to also know your plant. So,
of course.
Yeah, the peace lilies do like that, but they don't like to die. They came from the death. But when it starts to droop, not on a funeral. We don't want a funeral for the peace lily, okay? If it starts to droop, that's when you water it. But also, watering a peace lily properly is letting the water completely drench the soil. So you make sure that you get it really good moisture or get a good moisture level in general. And then you let the 2-week period go and the plant will definitely go through its process where it'll start to droop, but you bring it right back with the water.
Wonderful tips. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, people get worried when their peace lilies start to droop, but that's just it communicating to you and you got to water it. But you also, like I said, it's low light, but it loves light as well. So it's a plant that gives you variation. You can put it in a bathroom or you can put it in a living room without a good window or you can put it next to a window and it's just going to thrive. But the closer you put it to the sun, you're going to have to water it more because that's going to dry the soil out.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So more sun exposure is like more activity that's causing it to use more water, technically. That's one way to look at it.
More sun exposure means that you're going to have a quicker time for the soil to dry out.
Wonderful tip. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I know that like when the leaves are pointing upward, that's the sign that the plant is happy.
Yes.
And we're looking at the tips. That's been my practice. Is that true for you?
The tip of them will start to bend like this a little bit and then the whole leaf. But yeah, you got to pay attention to the whole leaf. Sometimes also the tip may turn brown and that means you probably are overwatering it or underwatering it. But make sure, the key is to make sure you have a hole in your pot. Because a lot of people don't like to have holes in their pots. I don't know why, but that's where the filtration goes through. Well, you can be cute, but you won't have your plant because it will have root rot.
So you're giving let's kind of zoom out a little bit, because that sounds like a somewhat universal plant care tip, is to make sure that you do have drainage for your plants. Correct. And you do have holes in the bottom.
Yes.
I know some people do different ways of caring for them, but we're talking about today drainage and the importance of it, because if we were getting into other methods, that would be a whole nother episode. We're not getting into a whole nother episode. Obviously, we're going to get into another plant fave, though.
Okay.
All right, let's get into our next Black plant fave.
Okay.
The collard green. I know, right? Delicious. Greens. A staple in the Black community. It's as good as money if you ask me. Okay? Definitely don't want to get it stuck in your teeth. We were just kikiing about that.
Yes, definitely.
Off the air.
I think there's a lot of significance, though, with collard greens, especially in the community. You know, you always see them on the table is one thing.
Yes.
But I think for me, when I hear greens, it's not just collards, you know, and I wonder why, one. But two, I think about kale, mustard, and collards. And I think things have gotten lost as, you know, I'm a millennial. And I think generationally, congrats.
I'm an elder millennial. It's fine. We're both.
We love that. We
relatable.
Accept you with open arms. But I think generational and culturally, like, things have gotten lost in the sauce when it comes to like nutritional facts and value. And kale for millennials is more prevalent than like a mustard green.
Okay.
So what like facts or culturally would you say is the thing of why you think the mustard has like dropped out of the conversation? Because I don't really see mustard greens as much. Okay. But I wonder why, because we love collards, but that's the foundation.
Wow, there's so many ways I could go with that. So I'm going to start with the grocery store. So some of us that are soil cousins are dedicated to exclusively growing their own food, or specifically their own greens, you know, but many of us who are not fully ready to do that, or just haven't gotten to growing greens yet, are going to the grocery store or maybe the farmer's market. The farmer's market is a little bit different, but I know that generally, because of the way that we are in society by now, that is just a very common place to get your food. Correct. It's regular. Okay. Habit. It's regular. It's the habit. And so at the grocery store, you always see the same produce, the same types. We know that there are so many more. Those of us who know that there are so many more types of greens, radishes, beets, you know, like everything that you see in the store, tomatoes. You can find different types of tomatoes just like in nature. You know, you can grow them for yourself if that's what you're interested in. And so when you're going to the grocery store and you're saying, or when you're telling me or kind of asking me like, what's going on with mustard? Why she not making her debut at the store like she once was? I would say there's a selection process, you know, by whoever is making the decisions in these grocery conglomerates to decide what we're actually going to have access to because of the relationship they have with the farmers. You know, we can get deep into the weeds on that type of thing on another episode. We love, you know, putting little bookmarks out there like that.
Plant a seed.
Plant a seed. And speaking of mustard is grown from a seed, obviously, but it's literally what mustard, the condiment, is made from. It's ground up mustard seeds. Fun fact. Some of us knew that. Did you know?
I did.
Since I'm talking to you.
I did.
You knew?
I did.
Okay, but you don't like the greens though.
I love the greens. I just am really confused in terms of like mustard in general. Now, you asked me, do I like the mustard?
You didn't like mustard
when
greens.
You say greens, I'm thinking in totality like collard greens. You see, I just did it. Mustard was not in my mind when you said that.
Okay.
So no, I do not like mustard greens. I don't like the texture. I don't like the bitterness of them. But I think for me, like growing up, I saw my grandmother cooking mustard greens as well. I see them in cans, but I never really, you know, took to them in general. So when I hear collard greens, I'm always like, well, where's the mustard? Because we see kale, but the mustard really is not prevalent. But maybe, you know, they're using it for other things. But I'm curious in terms of
stove like it used to be at the stove.
I see. Yeah. I see. But let's go back to collards.
Yeah, for sure.
What grow tip would you give, and at what point do you think is the best to cut collards and put them on the table? Because that's also an interesting thing that I'm interested to
I love
see.
that you asked me this, because I was just harvesting some the other day down to the community garden. You know, we don't just talk about gardening. We got to be about this life.
Absolutely.
All right. And so let's start with it being an easy plant to grow. Let's not get ahead of ourselves and talk about harvesting before we talk about growing. So these are plants. Well, first of all, just zooming all the way out, plants want to live. A seed just wants to germinate and live its best life. And so when we're planting collards with these tiny little seeds, because green seeds are collard green seeds. I'm trying not to trip over my words because there's so many technical ways to say this or say that or not say that. But when we plant those seeds, they germinate rather easily. You should always try to germinate more than you actually want to grow in case, you don't have 100% germination rate. But when you're growing them, once they get into maturity, once they get to maturity, they tend to be pretty easy to just keep them going.
Hardy.
Because they're hardy. You know plant terms.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's not forget this is a plant show.
It is.
So they are hardy. That's the word. Sometimes I just be saying stuff, but you
pull you right back
pull me right back in. And so with them being as hardy as they are, and they actually do prefer growing in cold weather, then that's a pretty cool combination.
It is, because they're durable. They have to be very, very strong to be grown in cold weather.
Yes. And they can take some heat, but depending on where you are would determine when you should be planting them, what kind. Well, we're talking about collards. So I was just thinking about greens in general, but pull me in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep me on track. But yes, when you're trying to get them started, it could take a little minute, to make sure that they get through that tender phase. But once they get established and they're all hardy and they get grown and it's time for the harvest, what I remember, because I was volunteering at a training farm, was I was getting the instruction to, when I'm taking the leaf off of the base, to make sure that I'm not leaving too much of that stem behind on the plant, because if you do that, there can be bacterial kind of infections
build up
that the plant becomes vulnerable to. So that is an example of something that happens when we're not making sure that we are harvesting properly. It's important to use, if you're going to use a tool to harvest, what can you tell them about what to do with those tools?
You got to clean it off, because if you bring any toxicity to the plant, like you just said, it can take over. And you want to make sure that it's sterile at the end of the day. Because as you're removing things, it's going to add something to it if it is touching the plant. So you got to make sure it's clean.
Yeah. And, if those bacteria is already on the thing that you are, cutting your greens with, that's not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So do not advise.
And when you talk about the things on the plant, you're talking about the pesticides?
No, not pesticides. Wait, let's rewind a little bit. I'm sorry.
So when you are growing a plant, because of course you're the gardener, so
you do house plants. I be outside.
House plants, right? But I think that it goes through it's outdoor, of course. So there's certain toxins and things of that nature that's in the environment already. So you could be cutting those into the plant without not even thinking about it. So do you have to clean the plant as well before you cut them? Do y'all think about that?
That's a good question. No, we don't tend to clean the
plant
plant before we harvest. We just want to make sure that whatever we're harvesting with is as clean as possible. That's a good question, though. Because I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, through and through. I just try to, because when I prune my plants, I do have certain things on the leaf that might be injected if I'm cutting it as well. But, just something to think about.
Something to think about. And another thing to think about would be in considering the cultural relevance of collards being one of our Black plant faves is the significance that it plays when we consider some of our cultural celebrations, some of our traditions. We think about New Year's, what do we do on New Year's? What we supposed to eat?
Black-eyed peas. I think you got some collard greens, some cornbread, but a hearty meal to keep you going, you know, for the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everything that is included in the traditional Black meal, that holiday meal, especially that New Year's meal with the Hoppin' John, the cornbread, is greens. And what they're symbolic of is abundance. You know, it's symbolic of even money, you know, and so good luck and fortune. So
yeah. And
a fave for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And
Okay.
I think with greens, like you said, there's plenty of greens and things of that nature, mustard, kale. But I think the thing to remember is that through it all, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, that you can make it through anything, whatever it might be, you know?
Say that again. Faith the size of what?
The mustard seed.
All right. That's a gem.
It is.
Just dropped. Faith will get you far.
It will.
Okay. So you ready to talk about palms?
I'm always ready to talk about palms.
What you know about palms, Plant Zaddy?
Well, first of all, palms are, once again, very finicky. I would say that they are one of the harder plants to keep alive because they're tropical and the environment inside your home needs to be very warm in terms of the moisture level. But they also love sun. So once again, you have to get used to something dying on a palm and not to freak out because they are very finicky. So you got to kind of let it go. But what I also know is they are biblical. And, you know, we have things like Palm Sunday, people making palms and crosses in our culture as well. But they stand for, I think it's triumph and victory.
Okay.
So that's one thing that's very powerful for a palm.
Yes.
So in the culture, you know, when you walk into your grandma's house or your auntie, you may see palms. And I think that's really where they're rooted because of that spiritual aspect behind them.
I like that assessment. You know, it sounds like you have given quite a bit of thought to palms because I was the one doing the research and you just coming off the dome with it.
Well, that's why they call me Plant Zaddy.
And better. Okay. Know that. So you mentioned Palm Sunday, and it was interesting in learning specifics about the origin of that and knowing that palm leaves, you know, like when we consider, I'm just thinking about the Michael Jackson video. Remember the time?
Yeah.
When
Royalty.
When you're being fanned by palms, it's a whole vibe.
Absolutely.
But it's definitely meaning that you might be a little important, you know? And so Jesus, obviously.
Yes.
He's coming through. It's what was the holiday?
Palm Sunday story. Jesus was walking through the street and they were fanning and then they put the palms on the ground, I believe, as well.
Right.
But they, of course, had to, you know, go through the whole process of cutting them down from the branch and the plants and things of that nature. But yeah, they were in the street and he was definitely intertwined in that whole conversation when it comes to palms. And I think that's also why this triumph and victory as well.
Right. It was in recalling in the scriptures, you know, biblical, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem.
Yes.
Okay. When he was greeted by the people that were waving palm branches out of reverence, obviously. And it's a reminder for Christians to welcome Jesus into their hearts and follow him. And we know that in consideration of the Black culture aspect of things, you know, Black folks, we love us some Jesus. You know, he's definitely that dude.
And we love something tangible.
If he lives in your heart. Yes.
Yeah. Like I think back, even thinking about, this is completely off topic, but I think it's still aligned. The Dieffenbachia was used as, you know, a torture device in the slavery days, but we had to use what we had at the end of the day. So now it's used as beautification. Palms have their own story, and now we use it currently as, you know, ways to remind us something tangible of how good God is and how we can triumph and, you know, those biblical terms. But I think we always, as a culture, use what we have for the positive.
Right. Tell us a little bit more about the Dieffenbachia you mentioned.
A beauty. That's actually one of my favorite plants. So
I like her.
Dieffenbachias are very strong, built with a cane, you know, in the middle. When I say cane, I mean a thick stalk.
Yes.
And they have really fat, beautiful green leaves that are hardy, just like a collard. Actually, a lot of people like to say they remind them of collards. I don't actually.
Here's a little something.
This is a Dieffenbachia right here. So as you see, this is a smaller one, but the leaves are very hardy. They have a dark green, light green look to them.
I like the patterns that be on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It looks sun splash. Like if it's in the dark, it's a really cool kind of effect. If you have it in a darker place or you see it in the dark. And speaking of places to see it, where's the most common place to see these plants? Starts with an A.
It starts with an A. Africa.
Yes. If we're getting in.
That's the right answer,
I'm just going to say the airport.
Oh.
the right answer for the Black in the Garden podcast.
Yeah,
though.
I mean,
Yes, we can give you a full point for that. Absolutely.
I'm so weak. Africa, I do believe that they are rooted out of Africa, though.
We're coming back to, because we're talking about palms anyway.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about the concept of the airport plants, and what I like to relay to people who are still trying to figure out how to care for plants or care for certain types of plants. Consider where you see them, the environments that you see them in, and consider the way that that environment works, so that you can try to emulate that when you're trying to figure out how to satisfy the plant that you have.
Yeah.
So if you know that this plant is in the mall under the skylights, then you know what the light situation is like in the mall typically. So you figure, maybe I got a little skylight, I can handle her. You know what I'm saying? But going back to palms, the difference in care, is there much similarity with Dieffenbachia versus palm?
Completely different.
Completely different. Okay.
Yeah. Dieffenbachias are way more durable than a palm, and once a palm starts to go, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone.
I was triggered. It's okay because I recently lost one.
I know, me too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, it's sad. We'll take a moment of silence.
Gone on to glory.
So yeah, you got to get used to.
I meant to be quiet.
But the thing about a palm is, I always tell people, get used to just replacing them. I mean, at the end of the day, if it serves a purpose, let it serve its purpose and move on. But you're gonna, go throughout the time and replacing, and you'll learn as well. The watering, your environment, because you might have to go through 2 or 3 of them to understand your environment and how palms react to your environment. So yeah, I mean, like you just said, if you see a plant somewhere and you want to emulate that environment and you don't have it, don't force it.
Right.
Go find something else and go get a Dieffenbachia over a palm.
Because you're going to be too hard on yourself trying to force that plant somewhere where it don't fit. No. Okay, let's don't do that. Don't do the plant that way, and then you're going to be disappointed and sad. It's a whole cycle.
Right. Right.
And you talking about keep replacing them. I didn't think you was going to say that, but
I'm always keep it real. Because I mean, the thing is, if you don't tell them, I mean, they're going to give up and then not replace it. But I always encourage people to just try again.
Okay, so there's an interesting story that I actually shared on my Instagram about a palm, but people didn't really know what I was talking about until I got to the end, because I did this kind of like, what is it called when you talking about the thing? Metaphorical?
Yes.
Yeah, it was cute. It was a good time. Y'all go find that at Black in the Garden on Instagram. But there's other, so your plants, Addie.
Yes. You
take care of the house plants. We've talked about the ways to keep your palm happy to be in your house to the best of your ability, although whatever you do might not work.
Yeah, plants like consistency too, so whatever you do choose, do it for at least like a couple months. Don't just change it up on a palm.
So she don't like you changing up on her. Right, but in changing up, just getting into the segue of things, let's talk about another way that palms are used, flipping into the agricultural aspect of things and considering how palms are also grown. Palms are also cultivated for their oil.
Palm olive.
See, I wasn't even ready. I wasn't even going to bring palm olive up, but what you know?
No, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's probably why they got the...
Yes, because palm oil, now I do know from, let me just get into it. So palm olive is a soap, right? It's, for me, in my household, we grew up using that dish detergent, but the soap version of it, if I remember correctly, is in reference with the palm being in that title. It's in reference to it being a soap made of a combination of palm oil and olive oil. Y'all ask Auntie Google about that now, because don't come in here telling me I lied to you. But it makes sense though, right? It does. Because soaps are made from oils.
Absolutely.
So I love how you brought up something that was going right along with it anyway, talking about the oils, talking about the olives, in the palm cultivation. What we were getting ready to talk about the oils for their use in foods. When we consider how food is mass produced, and so when oils and things like that are used in our foods, that means that they are using such a large amount. So when you consider, well, where are they getting these oils from? If they're being extracted from plants, then they must be growing them on a pretty large scale. The cultivation of palms can be very devastating to the environments that they are cultivated in, because people are not always careful about making sure that they are, not overdoing it. As soon as people figure out something makes money, I think of the term superfood, for example.
Yeah.
If something becomes popular, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to grow it. All the farmers want to get in on it, and everybody wants to make money off of it. But when it comes to palm oil, that is another way that we are to consider the significance of palms to Black people as a plant fave, because we're starting out just talking about, oh, it's cute in the house, but also we're consuming it. And maybe we may not even realize that, because we consider how we just buy the things that we buy. We use the things that we use. We use palm oil, or we might see it on our ingredient label, but we may not even realize that that oil came from an actual palm tree.
Yeah, plant
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you start thinking about like plants in that way? Like when you're at the store and you're, like considering how things go back to plants.
I probably would say I have a date and I know why. I don't eat meat. So I was vegan for 4 years, and now I'm vegetarian. Well, I'm a vegan that eats cheese, basically, because cheese is just so good. But for me, I was interested in learning more about what plants were used for. They're very multidimensional in terms of the usage, the value for our bodies and things of that nature, even like the mental, the therapeutic aspects and everything. So I think that's really when it started. It probably was like 2016. Yeah.
I like that you remember the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a good memory. You're very sharp. You thinking intellectual and things.
Try to be.
So we've talked about soap. We've talked about what to do with it in your house, how to keep her happy.
Oils.
Okay. And what's another thing?
I want to give one more tip though.
Oh, okay. One more tip.
Because I'm thinking about the comment in my head that I said, I don't want to encourage people to like get new plants, but I want to encourage people to try again. That's what it is.
Okay.
But with palms, I would put it outside. Especially because they like, the natural environment. Our homes are sometimes too cold, and one draft can kill a palm. So you got to be careful with the placement. Yeah, you've seen it. Yeah. You got to be careful with the placement, air vents in your home and things of that nature. But they love porches. I mean, look at a palm. When you see palms outside of restaurants, that's the reason why.
Chilling. Yeah. She'll cuss you out in the house, and then you throw her outside, and she's like, I wanted to go outside anyway. So... So thank you for that additional tip about palm care. And then the other one, this is a fun one. This is my favorite one.
Okay.
Palm wine. Okay.
Ooh.
Yes.
See, this is why I say it's educational. You got to teach me. Tell me about this one.
I feel like I can't even say that I've officially had palm wine before. So I'm very curious. Bucket list is getting long. But I can indicate that palms and their versatility of the types of products that they are able to produce and the ways that they are beneficial to us. We also get to have a good time by having us some of that good old palm wine. Now, palm wine is something that has been a part of African celebrations and cultural, traditions and things like that. I remember reading Homecoming by Yagayasi.
Okay.
If you know, you know. I feel like I'm saying this right, but I remember lots of mentions in that amazing book, by the way. If you haven't read it, please do. But I remember a lot of mentions of whenever it was something exciting that was happening, palm wine was coming out. They were feasting on it. They were getting drunk off of it. It was definitely a flex for royalty to come together and be drinking the palm wine and, just having a good time and trying to make decisions or doing whatever it is that dignitaries do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wish I could have been at one of them parties.
I mean, at the store, I think, right? You can buy.
Well, I'm gonna figure out how to get me some palm wine. Maybe somebody is listening to this and they want to bless me. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But in just getting into the really cool ways that palms are really benefiting us with the things that they produce, I think that's really cool to know that those unexpected things make it that much more valuable, and when I say palm, let me be clear. We're not talking about one specific palm. There's different palm trees. There's it depends on what you need to do. that determine what cultivar, what type of palm that you're going to be using in order to extract what you're trying to extract, to get what you're trying to get. And obviously, if you're paying attention, if you're a person listening to this, you probably pay attention to plants, reasonably so. Then you know there's different types of palms for aesthetic purposes anyway, especially if you get on down to Florida. Like, it's just, they're so abundant. So whether it's Palm Sunday or any other day of the year, we are happy to acknowledge the rich cultural heritage of the palms and the diverse ways that they are continuing to enrich our community every day. Shout out to the palms.
Palms, peace lilies, and collards.
Right, yeah. Palms, peace lilies, and collards.
Yes. They all enrich our lives every day, as long as you understand excellence, Black excellence. Black excellence
and Black plant faves, as we are talking about so excitedly on this here episode today. Is there an honorable mention that you think might have made the list?
Well, we touched on it, the Dieffenbachia, definitely. And I think another segment, and this is just a seed that I plant, is most plants are rooted in Africa, out of Africa.
Come on now.
So when we think about our motherland and how rich we really are, like it goes deeper. Yes, it goes so much deeper than what we really think. And that's why I also love plants, because it's a gift from God. And anything that God gives us, it's always going to be multi-dimensional, multi-valuable in many ways, just like animals. I mean, you know, everything's here. I don't eat meat, but there's many values to animals, to plants.
Yeah.
And we just need to start understanding and taking care of things a bit more. So the more knowledge that we have, the better we as a culture will be.
I like how you said that. I like how you stated that. The word that comes up in my mind is connection. We care more when we're connected, when we feel connected to a thing. You know, so in consideration of connection and how important it is, it really is an honor to be able to host the Black in the Garden podcast, just wherever it's at. But to have Black in the Garden be part of the WABE family and be able to have that much more of an ability to reach more people who may not have made those connections, who may not have considered those connections. That is the whole point, you know?
Community.
Yeah. Right. But the connection to nature is so important. I would say that it is more critical now than ever, because we are in the midst of so much environmental chaos, climate change, whatever you want to call it. It's very important for us to protect our planet. You know, it needs to be protected. It deserves to be protected. It deserves to be preserved. But people feel a disconnect from that importance when they're not connected, when they're not going outside, when they're not
connected to the soil. I mean, at the end of the day, I think I saw this statistic that we have 60 more years of agricultural soil left.
Wow, I thought it was less than that.
Even if it is, that's 60. I mean,
it's a little grim.
That's my, God willing, that's my, you know, life spans. Yeah. It's like, what? 60 more years of plants and greens and collards and everything? Like, that's just crazy to think about. It's mind-boggling.
And agricultural soil, I understand just off of context clues, but I've read, but I like to try to break things down for those who may not understand what that term means. Agricultural soil being the soil that is present on the land where agriculture is based, you know, the farms basically. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we are aware of these types of things so we know how to preserve those things as they need to be preserved. So we hope that y'all are feeling inspired and encouraged to connect with your plant fave, because obviously you have your own plant fave. We want to know what it is, so you can definitely reach out to us. The details are in the episode notes. We want you to take note of that and, you know, make sure that you follow up, because we want to have this conversation again and be able to emphasize some more of the plant faves. It could be revolving, you know. There's so many plants that are very central to our experience, especially as a culture, especially to Black culture. That's so there's a lot to consider. So we've unpacked our first 3 Black plant faves on this newly relaunched iteration of the Black in the Garden podcast on WABE. So excited about that. Josh, I'm so glad that you got to join me and provide some of the beautiful foliage that is adorning me and making me look extra lush, you know, and making me feel good and get all these good vibrations that are emanating, because I know you take good care of these plants.
Absolutely.
But yes, three Black plant faves. It has been a good time. I appreciate you so much for adding what you've added to the conversation, giving us these valuable tips and insights, you know, and all this wisdom. And now we are going to get into our watering moment. And if you're an OG listener of the Black in the Garden podcast, then you know I would always encourage you to water yourself before you water your plants. So that's why we call this the watering moment, because not only are we going to get a plant care tip, but we are also going to incorporate a bit of a self-care tip or a bit of an inspirational point. And so that's a 2-for-1.
Today, we're exploring the transformative practice of pruning, deeply intertwined with life itself. But before we get into pruning, I want to tell you what it is. Pruning a plant is really the practice of cutting away a leaf, and that's just okay. So as we release what no longer serves us, plants thrive when we trim away what is old to make room for new growth. Pruning teaches resilience. Plants rebound with vigor after a trim. So as you prune, remember this: letting go invites renewal, new growth, something new. So think of it in this way: that leaf, that person, that thing that's barely holding on, it's sucking energy out of you, the source, that plant. So get comfortable with getting rid of what no longer serves us. But before we go, I'm going to leave you with a quick tip. So during this process that we call pruning, remember, bringing dirty elements into a fresh space does not help anything. So keep your shears clean to maintain plant health. But if it's time to cut that leaf away, just do it, because you are doing yourself and that plant a favor. So as Plant Zaddy always says, plant more and worry less. Plant Zaddy out. Happy pruning.
Black in the Garden is produced by Crystal Devone, with additional production and editing from Scotty Crow, VP of Audio. The series was created by me, Colaby Talkin, as well as co-produced. And for more information, visit wabe.org/blackinthegarden.
WABE.